The Showboat Hotel Casino opened in Atlantic City in 1987. It was not the most glamorous casino on the boardwalk. It was not the largest. It was not the most architecturally distinguished. It was consistently profitable. For most of its 27 years of operation, the Showboat generated positive operating cash flows, maintained competitive occupancy rates, and served the specific Atlantic City customer demographic, the regional working class and middle class gaming visitor, with a product calibrated to that demographic's preferences in a way that the Strip-influenced megahertz of the 2000s had progressively moved away from. The Showboat closed on August 31, 2014. It was not closed because it was losing money. It was closed because Caesars Entertainment, which owned the Showboat through its acquisition of the Harrah's portfolio documented in Case File 018 and Case File 028, had determined that closing a profitable casino was the correct strategy for managing the Atlantic City market's aggregate supply-demand imbalance. The Showboat was demolished between 2015 and 2016. The forensic entry point for this case is not an individual property's financial failure. It is the specific logic of a market rationalization decision in which a profitable asset is deliberately closed by its owner to improve the commercial prospects of the owner's other assets in the same market, and what that decision reveals about the relationship between individual asset profitability and market-level competitive dynamics in a concentrated gaming market. The Showboat was profitable. Atlantic City was not. Caesars owned multiple Atlantic City casinos. Closing the least strategically important of its profitable properties to reduce the market's aggregate supply would improve the competitive position of its remaining properties by more than. The Showboat's individual profitability was contributing to the portfolio's overall returns. That calculation was correct. It was also the decision that eliminated a profitable casino that had served its customers for 27 years without a financial failure of its own. If this is your first case file from this channel, subscribe now, because every episode adds one more layer to what you are about to understand about the architecture of institutional failure. Caesars Entertainment's decision to close the Showboat in 2014 was made in the context of a multi-property Atlantic City strategic review that the company's financial difficulties, documented in Case File 018, had made necessary. The review required Caesars to evaluate each of its Atlantic City properties not merely on its own operating performance, but on its contribution to the company's aggregate Atlantic City portfolio performance relative to the capital and management resources that maintaining each property required. The Showboat's individual performance metrics were positive. Its occupancy was competitive. Its gaming revenue was generating positive EBITDA. Its customer satisfaction scores were consistent with a well-managed gaming property serving an established customer demographic. The Showboat strategic metrics were less favorable. The property's physical plant was aging and would require capital investment to maintain competitive with the market's remaining properties. The Showboat's customer demographic overlapped significantly with those of Caesars' other Atlantic City properties, particularly Bally's Atlantic City, creating a cannibalization dynamic in which Showboat customers were partially substitutable with customers of the sister properties in the Caesars portfolio. The specific covenant embedded in the strategic review's methodology was the one that allowed a profitable individual asset to be closed, because its closure would benefit the portfolio more than its continued operation would contribute to the portfolio's returns. That covenant is not written in any individual property's operating documents. It is written in the portfolio management logic of any large operator with multiple properties in a concentrated market. The optimal strategy for the portfolio is not necessarily the optimal strategy for each individual property, and the Showboat's contribution to the portfolio was being measured against the portfolio-level benefit of its closure, rather than against the property-level benefit of its continued operation. The Showboat's customers were real. Their loyalty was real. Their gaming spend was real. The 27 years of profitable operation were real. The demolition was also real. The site was subsequently acquired for non-gaming hotel conversion, a development that has proceeded at a pace reflecting the challenges of repurposing a gaming property in a market that was still processing the consequences of its own supply rationalization. At what point does a portfolio-level closure decision constitute an obligation to the individual property's customers and employees that the portfolio logic does not adequately discharge? Leave your analysis in the comments below. The appraisal methodology applicable to the Showboat closure decision was not the conventional real estate appraisal that this channel has examined in most case files. The relevant appraisal was a portfolio-level strategic analysis that required Caesars to estimate the net present value of two scenarios: continued Showboat operation through the holding period, and Showboat closure combined with the projected improvement in the remaining portfolio's performance from the supply reduction. The inputs to that analysis were more uncertain than most of the appraisal methodologies this channel has examined, because the relationship between individual property closure and remaining portfolio performance improvement in a concentrated gaming market is empirically difficult to measure. The specific uncertainty was in the customer transfer rate, the proportion of Showboat customers who would, following the closure, transfer their gaming spend to Caesars' remaining Atlantic City properties, rather than to competing properties or to casinos in other markets. If the customer transfer rate was high, the Showboat closure would significantly benefit the remaining Caesars portfolio, and the portfolio-level net present value of closure would substantially exceed the net present value of continued operation. If the customer transfer rate was low, the customers who had been loyal to the Showboat would not transfer to Caesars' other properties and would instead migrate to competitors, meaning the closure would eliminate the Showboat's profitability without generating the portfolio-level benefit that the closure logic required. The empirical evidence on customer transfer rates following casino closures in concentrated markets was limited at the time of the Showboat closure decision. Because the Atlantic City market was simultaneously experiencing multiple closures whose individual effects were difficult to isolate analytically, the Showboat closure was executed with incomplete information about the customer transfer rate, as most strategic decisions in rapidly evolving markets are. The subsequent performance of Caesars' remaining Atlantic City properties provided some evidence that the closure contributed to the remaining portfolio's competitive stabilization, consistent with the strategic rationale. It did not restore the profitability that the Showboat had individually generated or compensate the customers and employees whose service relationship with the property had been terminated to enable the portfolio optimization that the closure strategy required. If the forensic analysis this channel conducts is changing how you read real estate headlines, the like button is how the algorithm knows to send this case file to the next analyst who needs it. The demolition of the Showboat between 2015 and 2016 produced a specific civic and community response in Atlantic City that the simultaneous closures of other less profitable and less beloved properties did not. The Showboat had served its customer demographic with the consistency and a quality calibration that had generated genuine customer loyalty across 27 years of operation. The customers who had chosen the Showboat over the Strip influenced megahertz of the 2000s had done so because the Showboat's product was better suited to their preferences, their budget, and their expectation of what a casino visit should provide. The closure eliminated a product that had no direct substitute in the Atlantic City market. The customers who had been loyal to the Showboat did not simply migrate to Caesars' other properties or to the other surviving casinos in the rationalized market. Many of them left Atlantic City gaming altogether, finding that the remaining market's product offerings did not match the specific combination of price, atmosphere, and customer service that the Showboat had provided. The institutional denial embedded in the Showboat closure decision was not a denial of financial reality. Caesars' strategic analysis of the portfolio-level benefits of closure was coherent and reasonably well supported by the evidence available at the time. The denial was the assumption that the customers of a property deliberately closed for portfolio optimization reasons would behave in the same way as the customers of a property that had closed due to financial failure, selecting alternative properties from the remaining supply in proportions consistent with the pre-closure market share distribution. Customers of properties that close due to financial failure have no choice about the closure. They must find alternatives. Customers of properties that close due to portfolio optimization have already demonstrated, through their pre-closure choices, that the alternatives were available and were not preferred. The Showboat's customers had chosen the Showboat when other options existed. The closure eliminated their preferred option without providing a substitute that matched their stated preferences. The customer transfer rate was lower than the portfolio optimization model had assumed. The Showboat site in Atlantic City has been partially converted for alternative hospitality use following its demolition, a repurposing that reflects both the challenges of the Atlantic City real estate market and the specific difficulty of replacing a gaming-calibrated physical plant with a non-gaming use that generates comparable economic activity. The Ocean Casino Resort, formerly the Revel documented in Case File 020, reopened nearby in 2018 under new ownership, providing some of the upmarket gaming supply that the rationalization had removed from the market. The resort's casino hotel, documented in Case File 037, continues to operate and has benefited from the market rationalization that the multiple closures produced. What the Showboat case reveals in the context of this channel's 47 case archive is the most precisely documented example of a profitable business being deliberately closed for strategic portfolio reasons, and the specific consequences of that closure for the customers and community whose relationship with the property the portfolio optimization had not adequately priced. Every previous case file in this archive has documented a business that failed financially. The Showboat documents a business that succeeded financially and was nevertheless closed, demonstrating that the survival of a commercial business is not solely a function of its own performance, but of the strategic decisions of the larger institutional actor that controls it. The forensic lesson of the Showboat is uncomfortable for the conventional financial analysis framework that this channel applies across its archive. Not every institutional failure is a failure of financial performance. Some institutional failures are failures of strategic imagination, in which the portfolio optimization logic that justified the closure did not adequately price the long-term cost of eliminating a product that its customers had demonstrated they preferred. The Showboat was profitable. It was demolished. The Atlantic City market stabilized. The customers who had preferred the Showboat did not return in the proportions the portfolio model had projected. If this case file changed how you evaluate the relationship between individual asset profitability and portfolio-level closure decisions in concentrated gaming markets, subscribe because the next case examines what happens when the closure is made by the regulator rather than the operator. And in the comments, given the Showboat's documented profitability at the time of its closure, what specific obligation does a portfolio operator owe to the customers of a profitable property it closes for portfolio optimization reasons? The case file is open. This content was developed using artificial intelligence tools as part of the research, writing, and production process. All AI-generated material was subject to human review, editorial intervention, and approval before publication. Factual claims, interpretive framing, creative direction, and final content decisions reflect human judgment throughout. This disclosure is provided in accordance with platform transparency standards for AI-assisted content.